welcome to Dad Describes, where we discuss current events, politics, faith, entertainment, and anything else that comes up that's interesting to discuss. Thank you for tuning in. Feel free to hit the like button, subscribe. Today we're going to be talking about objective truth and worldview. And I know that I've touched on this in a few videos, but I think it's important to discuss, where I get the starting point for Dad Describes. I refer to the Bible a lot and what I talk about as a lens that I view the world through. And so I apply a lot of biblical standards in formulating my own opinions and thoughts. Not to say I don't have opinions and thoughts outside of that, but I do have to kind of check my own personal feelings on things versus that on which I consider objective truth, things that are true for all people, places, and times. I was, like many Americans, brought up in the church, brought up with a faith in Jesus and God, and as I grew older, wanted to do things my own way. I think a lot of people sowing wild oats. I've heard a lot of people refer to falling away from faith as a deconstruction of faith. And to some extent that happened with me, and I will tell you specifically how it happened. Going through college, going through just living life normally, it's very easy to compare what you have been taught about the world from religious institutions, church, Sunday school, your family. But when you go out and start living your life on your own, do those things really still apply? Does God exist? And for a long time, I had scientific arguments that would lead me to question whether God really existed. I believe, but do I believe in such a way that it would change my thoughts and my actions and my bearing on the world? No, not to that extent at that time. And it kind of bakes your noodle as a young person. That transition between this is what I was taught to believe versus this is actually the life I'm willing to lead. And it's a big disconnect, and for a lot of us, and for me, it started around 19, 20, 21, and just got worse the older I got. And for a long while, I believed that I had an intellectual issue with faith. And part of it too was, as an American, kind of the concept of bending the knee to a great cosmic creator didn't sit right with me, because I wanted to do what I wanted to do. Ultimately, I wanted to follow my own sense of what was right and wrong. So you live life, get a job, get married, have kids, you do what you think is right, but there are heart issues at play, specifically your own sense of what's right and wrong, and what ultimately I believed was a intellectual issue with faith, with submission, wasn't necessarily scientific. It was because ultimately there are things that I wanted to do that I knew biblically didn't match up with what I was living out. I think for a lot of people, and it was certainly true for me, I read the Bible largely, not completely, but enough of it. Certainly read the whole New Testament at that time. There were things in the Bible I liked and believed were true, but I didn't like everything in it. In fact, some of the stuff in it was hard to accept. And you start to buy into, some of the stuff in the Bible sounds a little fairy tale-ish. The stuff in Genesis Did it really happen that way? I'm not so sure. I don't know that I'm going to put all my eggs in that basket. And maybe it's the same way with morality a little bit. Some of this stuff I agree with, some of it I don't. I mean, come on, we're modern people today in this world, and society has evolved, and people have evolved. This all ultimately led me to what I think of as the buffet of Christianity. And I think it's a trap for many people, where you have a buffet of beliefs and morals that you'll take from the Bible. Yeah, I'm at the buffet, and I like some of this, and I like some of this, so I'll put some of that on my plate. I like meatloaf. I'm gonna put some meatloaf morality on my plate. But vegetables, I don't want to waste plate space on my plate for them vegetables, so I'm gonna skip over that stuff. And that's where I think the deconstruction of faith starts, because there's something in the heart that I wanted to do that didn't necessarily match up with biblical teaching. So you take what you want from the buffet and everything's all of a sudden fine, except it's not. And eventually those things stack up and build, and sin's progressive, and the next thing you know, your Judeo-Christian worldview, your faith in God starts to collapse as you kick one leg out from underneath you. And then the God that you believe in ends up being quite differently than the God you find in the Bible. And there are entire churches, and entire denominations, and entire movements within Christianity, or some other sects of other faith that are just like this. They pick and choose, and they basically are committing idolatry. If you start kicking out the legs of your faith like that, you're not going to have a faith by the end of it. You will have made something up, but it won't be Christianity. So when everything caught up to me and bit me in the butt, and I really had to stop, when you hit a point in your life where truth really matters, like when you've had it up to here with what you think is right and wrong, or the world around you or people around you, where you're just like, okay, I'm done. I've had it. I need some help. It's a pretty low moment when you have to come to terms with needing to find help for the crap that you've put yourself in, and you're looking for truth. Say, okay, I want to find out what's true. I don't care what I've been taught. I don't care what science says. I don't care what it is, but I want to find out what is true and apply it to my life. Because whatever that truth is, I want to believe in it. So for me, I really did reevaluate my faith in Christianity and put everything on the table and said, okay, I'm going to read the whole Bible. I'm going to really test what I have been taught as a kid and see if it applies. And I'm going to do this with some other faiths too. I'm going to consider Islam or Buddhism, Judaism, whatever ism that seems most likely to be the truth. I'm going to test it. And I did this with science too, and philosophy. So I ticked down the list. I spent a good deal of time, read a number of books, spent a lot of time just seeking truth, because there is objective truth out there. I don't care what anybody tells you. Like, in almost any culture or society that is a culture and society, there are things that we can agree on for all people, places, and times. Like marriage is important. That you should be committed to a person, and it just be between the two of you. that lying is bad, that stealing is bad, cheating is wrong, murder is wrong. We can all accept these things as, bad. Where does that come from? Why do we, why is that universal? So there does seem to be a moral, objective truth out there. And it just can't be, a survival instinct of humanity. So for me, it really seemed that if there is a law, if there is a universal law, then there has to be some type of universal lawgiver. It just doesn't exist out of nothing. But, there's nothing in science to really support that. So I really wanted to see what some of the physicists and atheists had to say. So yeah, I read some Dawkins, I read some Stephen Hawking to see what they had to say. The people that are considered the brightest minds in atheism or physics, to see what their worldviews were. To be honest, I was a little bit concerned to read Dawkins. I didn't want there to be nothing. And I was afraid Dawkins would convince me that, in fact, there is nothing. After reading his works, I really wasn't convinced by atheism. My problem with Dawkins is he just can't conceive of a God large enough and powerful enough to create the universe and everything around it. He just can't. He feels like that one little bridge in a process, little crane, building block, builds another, and builds another, and builds another, and you compress over time, and that's how everything is created. But I never feel like he addressed where the cranes come from, and I just honestly was never shaken by the atheist argument. And then I read Hawking, and he seemed to indicate that he didn't believe in an objective reality. So the brightest physicist since Einstein just doesn't believe anything's real. So he studies stuff in the physical universe, and he spends a lifetime pondering it and just doesn't think any of it's real. But when I look at some of his work, I think there's a scene that I recall where he is with his wife and they're looking at their children, and I think he makes the comment something like, "Look what we've made." So on one hand, he doesn't believe anything's real, but then when he looks at his own family, which is very real to him, he says, "Look at what we made." That's two very conflictory truth statements to me. I was really compelled by the cellular structure too when I looked at science, trying to figure out where the first cell came from. And this is, for me, it's like science-wise, if you can show me the process by which prebiotic chemistry, you get the formation of the first protein. Because if you can have a cell, cells are made up of thousands of different types of proteins, and the most basic protein is horridly complex to try to randomly shuffle up. And the scientific argument is if you have the big primordial soup and you add on all the right ingredients and you agitate it for enough time, then eventually you're going to get working proteins which add up to more complex structures, and then poof, over billions of years you get a cell. But when people that are heavy into the math look at this, you get into your computer science people, your mathematicians, they look at it and they're like, do you realize how large those numbers are you're talking about? And I invite you to look this up. Don't take my word on this at all. But, there's a PhD, Dr. James Tour, who talks a lot about this, and he builds nano robots, the prebiotic state. He's just as puzzled. He's one of the people I looked at, just as puzzled. Where does a prebiotic state form the first proteins from? And there's no good answer. It seems like the science, the more you dig into it, when you really dig into it, it seems like they're pitching more of opinion and theory than actual fact. But you're going to have to do your homework, and you're going to have to spend a lot of time and be open and objective with it. You don't have to take my word for this. In fact, you can't take my word for it, and you shouldn't. You should honestly go out and do the research yourself. So I looked at a ton of religions, and it seemed like the three to me that really stood out: Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. And when I looked at Islam, or looked at Judaism, it seemed a bit karmic. If you're a good person and you do a little bit more good than bad, then you get to go to heaven, or you get to be in good shape with a God. That didn't seem right. Where's the justice in that? And then with Christianity, I'm faced with this conundrum of some of these stories in the Old Testament, which seem fantastical. It seems like something out of fairy tales. But then I realized I had a Jesus problem. When Jesus was alive, the Bible essentially, the Old Testament wasn't controversial in its day. It was all there. Jesus references a number of these passages. So if Jesus is who he claims to be, then he's validating the Old Testament. So if I want to really discover where I have a faith in Jesus or not, I need to just take it at the source and really discover, was he alive? What did he preach? And was he who he claimed to be ultimately, the Son of God, come to redeem mankind for our transgressions, for our sins, for the things we do that aren't right? And I'm not going to unpack all of that for you. There's some great books out there. Not Enough Faith to Be an Atheist, or Cold Case Christianity. Really fantastic read by an atheist cold case detective who wanted to take on whether Christianity was real or not. So after I went on this big search and spent a lot of painful hours going over it, I found my faith back in Jesus. Yeah. And there were things in my life that I have struggled with all of my adult life. And I didn't struggle with I found myself not struggling with those things. And it was a miracle to me. For me in my life, personally, I found redemption and freedom. And it's not always easy to submit to a Christian worldview. And it's not easy in our culture, because our culture is ever growing more hostile to anybody that really believes in anything, whether it's Christianity or whether you stand against anything that's whether you stand for anything that is against the culture. And man, our society is just throwing itself in the toilet. I've got kids. What am I going to tell them about the world? How do I prepare my kids to deal with the world today, with having a faith in something, with things that the neighbors or the classmates in school aren't going to believe in, aren't going to say is right. I would ask you this, are you really happy with where our culture's at? Do you recognize it from what you grew up in? Does it scare you how fast everything seems to be going in the toilet? What do you stand for? Do you really think that where we're headed is worthwhile? I had a friend tell me something along the lines of, well, yeah, we grew up in the church together, but I want my kids to go out and just kind of experience the world and make up their own conclusions. I understand that to a point, but if you're not telling your kids what's right and wrong, what these objective truths are, someone else is. And it might not be the truth. It might just be a load of garbage. So when I give commentary and opinion on my channel, it is coming from the place of what is true, largely. What matters? What values and virtues can we extract from this item? How do we apply it? Okay, this thing's happening in our culture. What can we guess is right? Or what is right? And how do we apply biblical truths to it somehow? Sometimes there just are no good answers. And you're just left with praying about something. The world is a very broken place. And as advanced as we think our society and culture is, and as much as we think we can elevate it, the truth is we're no more sophisticated than in the times of Moses. Not a bit. In fact, in that world, they may have been in more touch with reality because their daily living was a little bit more about survival. And if you know you have to do X, Y, or Z for you and your people to survive, that's what you do. Where in the United States, it's like, if you need food, just go get food stamps or something. There's literally people that give you free food here. But it's not like that everywhere in the world. So think about this stuff. Find truth. Go on your own journey. If you're on your own journey, let us know in the comments below. Let us know what you think. What do you think is objective truth? Is it something you're interested for? Is it something you really want for yourself and your family? At some point, this stuff's gonna matter. At some point, you're gonna get hit with something in your life, and you're gonna want to hold on to something solid that doesn't change, that culture doesn't change, that the whimsical nature of other people's hearts or your own heart doesn't change. Your conscience, that thing that tells you that things are right or wrong, you're going to want it and you're going to need it. Where's it going to be? Where are you going to find it? Thank you for watching. Dad Subscribes. Don't forget to hit the like button below, subscribe, or if you really want to help out my work, share this on your social media with your friends and say, hey, have you thought about this? This guy's a little loopy. What do you think? Does he make any sense at all? Remember, nobody listens to Dad until you are desperate to hold on to some type of truth in your world, and you find out that that truth might just come from the universal Dad, God. We'll catch you next time.